I've heard people say that betrayal feels like a punch to the gut, but when it comes from the two people you trust the most, it's like someone rips the floor from under you and you're left free-falling with no end in sight. My girlfriend, Emily, and I had been together for 4 years. We met in college, survived long distance after graduation, and finally moved in together 2 years ago. My older brother, Mark, was always around. He and I had a complicated relationship. He was charming, confident, and always seemed to outshine me no matter what I did, but I never thought he'd cross a line that couldn't be uncrossed. Emily always said she liked him because he was funny in a dorky way and easy to talk to, but I brushed it off. One night, about 3 months ago, Emily told me she was going to a girls' night at her friend's apartment. Nothing unusual. She did that once in a while. But when I woke up around midnight and she still wasn't home, I texted her to see if she was okay. No reply. At 1:30 a.m., I called. No answer. At 2:15, I heard the front door unlock. Emily slipped inside looking flushed and avoiding eye contact. She smelled faintly of cologne. Not hers, not mine. I didn't say anything then, but that smell burned into my brain like a warning siren I couldn't turn off. The next morning, I decided to check her location history on Google Maps, something I'd never done before. My chest tightened when I saw where she had been. Not her friend's place. Mark's apartment. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped my phone. I didn't confront her right away. I needed proof. Something undeniable. Over the next week, I became a detective in my own home, watching her closely, noting every lie about work running late or grabbing coffee with the girls. Every time she said it, her location history told me the truth. She was at Mark's. By the 5th time, I felt sick just looking at her. I knew I couldn't let this go quietly. I woke up the next morning after another one of Emily's late work nights, and she was already in the kitchen, humming to herself like nothing was wrong. She was wearing the same hoodie she'd left in last night, but now it smelled faintly of Mark's cologne again, a smell I could recognize anywhere, because it was the same overpriced brand he'd bragged about buying in Vegas. I sat there, sipping my coffee, staring at her like I was looking at a stranger. My mind was screaming at me to ask her outright, to just put the truth on the table. But a calmer, colder part of me told me to wait. If I confronted her too soon, she could spin some half-believable story, cry, and maybe even gaslight me into thinking I was paranoid. I needed her caught in a way that she couldn't wiggle out of. That evening, I texted Mark, something casual like, "Hey, haven't seen you in a while, want to grab a beer soon?" He didn't respond for hours, which was unusual. Normally, he'd reply in minutes. I checked Emily's location again at 8:45 p.m. She wasn't at work. She wasn't at any friend's house. She was at Mark's apartment. My stomach twisted, but I forced myself to play it cool. The next day, I bought a small voice-activated recorder and hid it in the living room near the couch where Emily usually took calls when she thought I wasn't listening. That night, I pretended to be asleep early. Sure enough, around 11 p.m., I heard her giggling softly in the living room. When I checked the recorder the next morning, I felt my entire body go cold. She was on the phone with Mark, telling him how she couldn't keep sneaking around much longer and how he's starting to get suspicious. She laughed and said, "You know he's always been jealous of you, right? He'll never compare." That sentence felt like someone had driven a knife into my chest. It wasn't just cheating, it was humiliation. They were enjoying my ignorance together. I sat on the edge of the bed, shaking, thinking about every holiday dinner, every family gathering where the three of us had sat side by side. Now I knew they had been sharing looks and secrets the entire time, right under my nose. I decided then that I wasn't going to scream, cry, or beg. No, I was going to burn it all down, carefully, methodically, and in a way that they would never see coming until it was too late. I started by watching them more closely,
noticing every little detail I'd missed before, the secret texts that popped up and disappeared, the late-night calls that went straight to voicemail, the subtle looks Emily and Mark exchanged whenever I walked into a room. I felt like I was living in a nightmare I couldn't wake up from, but deep down, something else was growing, a fierce determination to take control of the situation. I rented a small apartment downtown, a place no one knew about, and set up cameras around my own home to catch any unexpected visits or calls. I even got a cheap drone to follow Mark's car sometimes, just to see where he really went after work. Then I began collecting evidence, screenshots, recordings, photos, everything that would prove beyond any doubt what they'd been doing behind my back. One evening, I confronted Mark at a local bar, pretending I didn't know anything. We talked about work, old family stories, even joked about how I was the boring one compared to him. But I noticed his smile was tight, forced, like he was waiting for the punchline. That night, as I drove home, I sent a carefully worded anonymous email to Mark's girlfriend. The next morning, her messages flooded my phone. Angry, confused, heartbroken. The ripple effect had begun. Emily, meanwhile, started acting differently, more distant and careless, as if she knew her cover was blown but had no way out. I kept my distance, but stayed ready. The final act was coming, and I planned to make sure they both lost everything. The days that followed felt like watching a slow-motion collapse. I could see the cracks forming in their carefully constructed lives, and it was strangely satisfying. Mark's girlfriend confronted him publicly, sending screenshots and messages to their mutual friends and family. The humiliation was immediate. His reputation at work took a nosedive, whispers spread through his circle, and his once solid relationships started crumbling. Emily's world wasn't much better. Her so-called friends began avoiding her. The same people who had once laughed with her, now looking through her like she was invisible. I watched it all unfold, always careful to stay one step ahead. But I wasn't done yet. I still had one last move to make. I hired a private investigator to dig deeper into Mark's finances and personal affairs. What I found confirmed my suspicions. Not only had he been lying to everyone, but he'd also been siphoning money from a family trust meant to support all of us. Armed with this evidence, I confronted him face to face. The look of shock on his face was priceless. He went from cocky to defeated in seconds. I told him flat out that his lies, betrayal, and greed had cost him everything: his girlfriend, his job, and now his family's trust. Meanwhile, Emily tried to reach out to me, begging for forgiveness, tears in her voice. I didn't even respond. Their betrayal had left scars too deep to heal with words. The last straw came when they both showed up at a family gathering, hoping to act like nothing had happened. I stood my ground and told them publicly what I knew. The room fell silent, eyes darting between us. They finally understood that their games were over, and I was no longer the man they could walk over. Walking away from that night, I felt free. Free from lies, free from pain, and ready to rebuild my life on my own terms. Because some betrayals don't just break trust, they reveal who you really are. And I was determined to rise above.
Months passed and the dust settled, but the impact of their betrayal lingered like a shadow I couldn't shake. I moved to a new city, started fresh with a new job, and slowly rebuilt the life they tried to destroy. The silence from Emily and Mark was deafening. Neither reached out again, and honestly, I didn't want them to. I realized something important in those quiet moments. Forgiveness wasn't for them, it was for me. I had to let go of the anger to find peace. Occasionally I'd hear from mutual friends, snippets of their lives, Mark struggling to find work, Emily isolated and alone. It wasn't satisfaction I felt, it was closure. I wasn't the broken one anymore. I was stronger, wiser, and ready to open my heart again, but this time only to those who truly deserved it. Betrayal cuts deep, but it also teaches you the value of trust. And after everything, I learned that sometimes the biggest betrayal comes not from strangers, but from those closest to you. And how you rise after is what defines you.